Hello everyone, this is Umar. Welcome to the channel. So in this video, we'll be talking about the virtualization and mainly we'll be focusing on Proxmox. But before I get into that, I want to just quickly explain you why I moved from VirtualBox and VMware Workstation to Proxmox. So I will give you my reasoning, what are the challenges I faced and why I moved to Proxmox. So these two softwares are wonderful software. I've been using it for quite a long time. uh, let's talk especially about the VirtualBox. VirtualBox I've been using for many years, and because it's free, it's open source, it's portable. Install it on your laptop, desktop, and then create VMs. It's a wonderful software. But the problem is it has limitation. What limitation? It's not a enterprise grade hypervisor. It's very good for your desktop or your PC or your laptop you're running on. And the problem with this one is you whatever virtualization you do, you're limited within the limits of your host where you're running the VirtualBox. So it does not run on bare metal. So that's the problem because I have been using VirtualBox on my laptop, which is a workstation P51 ThinkPad. Uh, and that is it's a beast of a machine. It is Xeon processor, 8 core CPU. It has 64 GB RAM. It has 2 terabyte SSD. It's a wonderful software. I've been using VirtualBox on that machine, and it was amazing. But the problem is whenever I install VMs, I install too many VMs on that one. So I literally pushed the limits of that host machine of my laptop. It used to it used to heat up, and then I had to carry the laptop along. I had to shut down the VMs. Uh, uh, all my work had to be, I had to be very careful when I was using VirtualBox with so many VMs. But I have used it. I'm occasionally using it as well for small experiments. But it's not a very huge enterprise grade hypervisor. It does not work on a bare metal. You cannot install it in bare metal. You cannot do clustering and all those things. But if your usage is very limited, VirtualBox is a wonderful tool. Then I used VMware Workstation as well at my home. I created with the free version. I created my virtualization setup within the VMware, but I hit a lot of limitation, very similar to VirtualBox. So because free version, it's the paid version. It's an enterprise grade hypervisor, by the way. So we are using it at work, and it's a wonderful software. But the free version has so many limitations that I had to give up because I was facing problem with creating clustering. I was facing problem with taking backups of VMs. So I had many issues with the free version. So many features which I wanted was not there. So I got stuck with many things. Then I started with Proxmox. Initially, it was a very difficult journey. Right? It took me some time to understand this entire product. But the more I started working on it, the more I started loving it. So first thing first, it's free. It's a fully featured enterprise grade hypervisor. No, it puts no limit on your virtual CPU, RAM, or storage you're using, right? And it runs on bare metal, fully featured cluster, Ceph storage cluster you can create on it. You can make your entire data center at home with the hyper-converged infrastructure. I will show you. We will go through step by step what we are going to cover in this video. It has embedded built-in containerization feature, a single web-based centralized management for your entire cluster, and the only thing you pay in Proxmox is for the support. So as long as you know how to work on this product, especially in your home lab, you don't need the licensing, you don't need the subscription. So without subscription, you can run. So for home lab, it's wonderful. By the way, it's a production. Many companies are using this product in their production environment as well. So they're paying for the support. But for us, if you're using for your home lab, you don't need that. So it's absolutely free with full featured uh, enterprise grade hypervisor. So what we will be covering in this one, we will be installing Proxmox. We will be installing Proxmox. We will be installing on a single node. We'll download Proxmox, create bootable disk. We'll just go through the installation process of Proxmox. We'll explore a single node setup. So we will install Proxmox on a single machine, bare metal. and then we'll go through I will take you through the, how to create VM, how to explore it, what are the options and features that it has. Then we will create Proxmox cluster configuration. We'll create three nodes, and we'll combine them and create a cluster on those three nodes. We'll create a complete Proxmox cluster with three nodes. Then we will create a Ceph storage cluster within that cluster, and we'll be exploring those cluster. And I will be showing you how to navigate through it, how to create VMs, how to move around, and what are the advantages of creating a cluster. And if in the end I will be showing you how you can expose your Proxmox setup at your home through Cloudflare, so that you can use it, you can access it over the internet from anywhere you want. So your home lab, you will be able to access it, because this is one of the challenge. When I was using VirtualBox, I had this challenge. I was using so many other ways to access my home lab. There are many other ways, but I found a very simple solution with Cloudflare. It's absolutely free. You can create account in Cloudflare, create a Cloudflare tunnel, and then expose your Proxmox setup through Cloudflare, and that's it. There it is. You will be able to access your home lab from anywhere as long as you have internet. So let's go step by step. We'll go with I've given you the introduction. Now we'll go step by step how to install Proxmox, how to configure it, how to configure clusters, Ceph storage, and then we'll test it. And then I will, in the end, I will show you how you can expose it, your home lab Proxmox setup, expose it to the internet through Cloudflare tunnel. All right, so let's start the process of installation and configuration of Proxmox. The first thing we have to do is download Proxmox VE and create the bootable disk. So we will download Proxmox VE ISO image from proxmox.com, and then we will create a bootable disk. Then using the bootable disk, we will install Proxmox. And once the Proxmox is installed on single node, we will go through its basics features. So let's begin. So go to proxmox.com and click on download, and under Proxmox virtual environment, you see you have Proxmox VE 8.0. So this is at the time of making this video, this is the version 8.0-2, and the file size is 1.11 GB. So click on download, it will download your ISO image. So once the ISO image is downloaded, I have already downloaded it. So once the ISO image is downloaded, we have to create a bootable disk using that ISO image. So you can create bootable disk using different softwares if you have, but I'm using rufus.ie. So go to rufus.ie, and out there you'll see this program. Depending upon your platform, download the program, the exe file. It's not the installable, just download it and run it. It will run directly. So use the rufus.ie to download it, depending upon your platform, and then run it. So the moment you invoke this one, you will see this pop-up window. Now in my laptop, I'm using a flash disk. There is no disk connected right now. So I will connect my USB flash. So as you can see, the moment I plugged in my USB flash disk, it showed me it's a 16 GB, but you can use 2 GB flash disk as well. So it will automatically select it. Then you have to browse for your ISO image. So wherever you have downloaded it, I have downloaded it on my desktop. So I click that one, select it. It will give you a couple of messages depending upon. So make sure that the disk does not contain any important files. So make sure that you took the backup of it, because this process is going to wipe out everything on that disk. So just select the ISO image. The disk is already selected, and then start. It will give you a couple of warning. Just say okay, and then it will start creating the bootable disk. So it takes a couple of minutes, few minutes to complete. So once it is completed, we'll get back to the installation process. So let this process finish. All right. So as you can see, it took few minutes and completed the disk creating the bootable disk. So the next thing, just close this one. Next thing we will do is we will boot from this disk and start the All right, so now using that bootable disk we just created, we will boot our system. So if you're installing in your laptop or you're installing in your desktop or in your server, so make sure that you select a proper boot sequence in your BIOS settings. So make sure that the disk which we created, you inserted that disk in your laptop or your desktop or your server, and make sure that you selected the proper boot sequence in your BIOS settings. So once you set that, select that, reboot your machine, and it will boot you and it will prompt you the Proxmox installation setup. Right. So in this one, it will give you three options. So we will not go in the details. We will be just installing using the graphical mode. So just select the graphical mode and select enter. So it will go through the boot process. All right. So the installation is completed. It will just reboot the machine. Make sure that you remove your bootable disk from your machine. It gives you the message. As you can see, it will give you this screen, and this, so it will give you the first screen. It's the license agreement. So just select on agree, go through it if you want to, and then click next. So as you can see, it's giving me the target disk. So I have two disks connected to it. All right. So first one is 32 GB, second one is 50 GB. So I will be installing it on the first one, 32 GB. So this disk we will be using it for the installation of Proxmox. The second disk I will tell you later, we will be using it for the Ceph configuration. So right now we will be installing the software on first disk, which is 32 GB. So select that one, and whichever disk, if you have any other multiple disk connected, so you select based on your own installation. What I suggest is whatever, if you're installing on your laptop or desktop machine, so if you have the NVMe SSD, so install your Proxmox on that and have another additional disk for your other storage related or VM related tasks. All right, so in our case, we are just selecting the first one, select next, and it will ask you for the country. I'm selecting where I'm staying right now, time zone is this, and then next. So this is the root password. It is asking me for the root password. So we'll provide the root password, right? And provide the email ID. I'm just providing the uh, my own email ID .mate technologies at gmail.com. So you can provide your own email or you can provide the dummy email ID, no issues. Right, so it will ask you for the host name. We will be selecting the host name. You can select your own host name depending upon your setup. So prox ve01 dot tech-mate dot I. So you can select your own domain name, and then we will be selecting the IP addresses. So 10.10.10.235. All right. All right. So we will be selecting the uh, use the IP address depending upon your own setup, your own local network, and then click next. So even in this one, I will say 10.10.10.252. Right. So select the gateway, select your IP address for the host where you're installing Proxmox, and then click on install. So it will take few minutes to complete the installation, and it will automatically boot uh, your machine. So, but while it is rebooting your machine, make sure that you remove the USB again. Otherwise, it will go back and boot from your disk again. So either you make the changes in the BIOS to change the boot sequence, or remove your bootable disk when the installation completes and it reboots. So it takes a few minutes. Let it complete, and then when it boots, we will just remove the flash disk from the machine. and your Proxmox is installed. As you can see, this is your, like, it gives you a web-based URL to access your Proxmox. But we are in command line interface, we are in CLI, so let's log in as root and the password which we have given at the time of the installation. So we are logged in. So our Proxmox installation is completed. Next thing we will do is we will go to this URL, the IP address which we have given, and the port number. So the default port number which Proxmox uses is 8006. So next thing is we will try to access the Proxmox using the web. Okay, so after completing the installation, as we have seen in the CLI mode, it provided us with the IP address and the port number to access Proxmox through web-based interface. Now I'm using this IP address scheme, but you can use your own IP address depending upon your home network or your home lab or whatever setup you have, whatever subnet you're using in your home lab. So, but just make sure that it is accessible within your network, the IP address that you're using, so that you can access it through the web browser. So once you try to access this one on default port, it will give you this SSL warning. We can ignore that because we don't have SSL certificate installed. So we will proceed with this one. So once you say proceed, it will give you the login screen. We will provide root as password and root as the username and password which we provided during the installation of Proxmox. So it will tell you that no valid subscription. That's fine because we don't have subscription. Subscription is needed when you are using it for your production implementation. That's when the subscription is required. Otherwise, you can still use this product with all its full feature without the subscription as well. So this is what Proxmox looks like, the web-based interface. We just under the data center, if you see, this is the summary. I have the single node, and that node has 4 CPU, 4 GB RAM, and this is the remaining disk space. Now under this data center, we just have one node. This is a single node installation. So we can see the summary of this node as well. It is giving us the node information for CPU, 4 GB RAM, and the other information about the CPU and the kernel model. We can access the shell also through this one, through web-based interface, and the I think release 8, Proxmox release 8 is using Debian Linux 12 version, book 1. Alright, so this is the shell interface of your Proxmox installation. It has network setting, it has certificates, DNS, host settings, syslog about the log information about the node, and the other information which we will go through it later on. Right, so we have assigned two disks as you have seen during the installation. We did the installation on first disk. The second disk we haven't touched it yet, but we will be using it for the Ceph storage cluster configuration. All right, so this is the basic thing which you can see. We can create VMs. You right click that, create VM. It will ask you for the couple of questions, and then you can create VM out here, give it a name. We will go through this setup once we have completed our cluster configuration. I will take you through. I have a single node Proxmox installation as well as I have the cluster. So what we will do, we will complete our installation of cluster. We will complete our configuration of Ceph storage, and then we will browse Proxmox in details. We will create VMs. We will install the operating system in it. We'll create the templates. We'll clone the machines using the templates. We will move the machines around within the cluster. So I will go through all the settings, all the configuration in details once our cluster configuration is complete. Now this is how a single node installation looks like. What I will do, I will create two more machines, two more nodes, and using those three nodes, we will create a cluster. So let me do the installation for the other two machines, and then we will start with the cluster installation. The other two machines installation is same, so I'm not repeating out here. let me create those two machines, and then once those two machines are ready, we will create a cluster using three nodes, and we'll see how it. All right, okay. So I have completed the installation of other two nodes as well. So we have, as we have seen in the previous section, we installed Proxmox on 10.10.10.235, this node. I have done the installation on two other nodes as well. So I created two more nodes. As you can see, I have PVE Prox VE01. I have Prox VE02, which is running on 236, and I have Prox VE03, which is running on 237. So these are three different host machines where we have Proxmox installed. And if you can see in the data center settings, if you go to the summary, each installation is independent. It has one node, it has 4 CPU, 4 GB RAM, and this space. And all these machines, if you see, they're identical. They're identical. They have 4 CPU, 4 GB RAM, and they have same type of processor. It is not necessary to create the cluster using the identical machines, but it is a good practice. It is recommended to have the same configuration of your cluster machines. So in my case, I have created three machines with the same identical configuration. So what we will do in this section is we will create a cluster, and we should see when we access one of our cluster node, one of our Proxmox node, we should see all three nodes under the single data center. So the entire cluster should be visible within the same data center with the combined resources of 4 CPU, 4 CPU, 4 CPU, which means 12. We should be able to, under this data center, we should be able to see three nodes, and we should be able to see 12 CPUs and 12 GB RAM combined, and we should be able to use the cluster and create the machine, create the VMs, and move it around, and then we should be able to create the Ceph storage cluster as well. So for the entire cluster to work, at least you need at least three machines. You can create a cluster using two machines, but you will not be able to use the whole function of your Proxmox cluster. So as you can see, I have created two more machines. So I have in total I have three machines. Now what we will do, we will create a cluster using these three machines. So the first thing is we will go to the first node, data center, click on the data center. If you click on cluster, here you see there is no cluster created. So you get the option of creating the cluster or joining the cluster. So in the first node, what we will do, we will create a cluster. You can give it any name, prox cluster 01, for example. So this is the first cluster, and it will ask you for the IP address of the cluster. So we will ideally in production environment, we should be using multiple networks, a different subnet for the management, different subnet for the cluster. That I will show you later on. But in this demo lab, I'm just using single IP address, so we'll be using the same IP address for our cluster management. So I'm providing this name. You can give this name. You can give this any name you want. All right, and leave the options as default. I will say create cluster. It will just take a couple of minutes and says task OK. The moment you see task OK, that means it has created the configuration. Now, if you see under the cluster configuration, it gives you the name, and there is just one node under this cluster. All right. Now, in order for the other nodes to join using the first cluster, using the first node, there is a join information. If you click on the join information, you get this information. Copy this one, copy this information, close this, go to the second node, data center, cluster, and join cluster. So on the second node, we will be joining the cluster. So when you click on join cluster, the information you copied, just paste here. It will pick up automatically all the information about the cluster. Just provide the password, root password here, and leave everything as default because we are using single network for all the management configuration. So join cluster. It should join the cluster. The process sometimes actually it does not give you the proper status in joining the cluster. It hangs because it does not refresh the page sometimes. So if you go to the first node, you will see this appearing. If you refresh the page, you see the cluster node appearing. So we are on 235 and we can see the node 2 is available in the cluster. So in this one it hangs. Never mind, just go and refresh the page on 236. Provide the root username and password. So as you can see, the node 2 joined the cluster. So node 2 is part of the cluster. So I'm accessing, the cluster is accessible from 236, cluster is accessible from 235. We should be able to see both nodes. And if you go in the data center and summary, you should see there are two nodes in the cluster and we can see 8 CPUs. So it will show you the combined CPU from both nodes. It will show you 8 GB RAM combined using the both nodes, and it is showing you the space available which is combined for node 1 and node 2. So similarly, when you're adding a third node, don't use the same information. You go to the cluster, go to the first node again, go to the data center cluster and click on join information again, because this information is actually combined. uh, this is a combined information for both node 1 and node 2. So we'll copy it again, close this. We'll go to node 3, which is 237. See, this is not part of the cluster, this is a single node setup. We can see only for prox v03. So we'll go to the data center, click on cluster, and we'll say join cluster. We will paste that information here, or it will pick up all the information automatically. Then we'll provide the root password and we'll say join Proxmox cluster. So it will go through the process again, and it may, sometimes it completes, sometimes it hangs. I don't know, I have to investigate that. But if you go to node 1 again, refresh the page, you should be able to see node 3. So the node third is part of the cluster now. So if you go here in the data center summary, you will see three nodes are part of the cluster. We can see 12 CPUs which are combined, node 1, 2, and 3, and we are seeing 12 GB of RAM and the space combined. So this completes our cluster configuration. In this case, we will do the same. We'll go and refresh the page, log in again on node 3, provide the username and the password, login. So we should be able to see the cluster. So all three nodes are part of the cluster. So how simple is that? So creating a Proxmox cluster is not that difficult. It's very easy, very simple. And the cluster is basically accessible from all three nodes. It's accessible from 237, it is accessible from 236, and it is accessible from 235 as well. So now our cluster configuration is done. Next thing is we will be configuring the Ceph storage. So for Ceph storage, what we will do, we have already assigned, if you check each node, we have already assigned a disk. There is an additional disk in each node, which is the same capacity, 53 GB it is showing. It's a 50 GB disk in node 1. If you go to node 2, here we have 50 GB. In node 3, we have, in node 3 also we have 50 GB disk assigned. So what we will do, we will create a Ceph storage cluster within our Proxmox cluster. Okay, so our cluster is ready. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to create a Ceph storage cluster for our existing Proxmox cluster. So what are the advantages of creating Ceph storage cluster? I will show you once our cluster is up and running. I will show you the benefits of it, why it is needed, why it is important to create that. You can use your cluster without creating the Ceph storage cluster. You can use the, in the existing condition, you can use your cluster, but I will show you the difference between when you have a Ceph storage cluster and when you don't have. I will show you the differences at the end of the video. So since we have the cluster ready and we will create a Ceph storage, it is better to update your packages in each node. So go to each node in the shell prompt. Uh, we will try to update all the packages in each node before we begin the configuration of our Ceph storage. So it's a good practice whenever you install it, make sure that you update all the packages. Now the problem out here is we do not have the subscription. Since we don't have the subscription, if you try to update the packages, you will get an error message. I will demonstrate that and I'll show you how to fix it. So if I go and say update, apt update, it will try to access the repository and it will say enterprise, it is failing in accessing the enterprise repository, because enterprise repository is for the uh, organization or the members who have the subscription for the enterprise repository. So since we do not have the subscription, it is going trying to reach the enterprise repository and it is failing. So we are not using this for production. For production system, it is recommended to have the subscription. But since we are using it for our lab, so we can do a workaround out here. We will go to repository and we will disable the enterprise repository. So this is the enterprise repository. Go to repository in each node, click here and disable the repository. Same we will do for the Ceph sequence. So we will disable both repository. Then we will go to shell again and we will say apt update. It should pick up all the update. It says 38 packages. Then we will say apt upgrade. It will upgrade all our packages. Right. So we don't necessarily need a subscription to run Proxmox in the lab, but we can just use it by disabling the repository. So we'll repeat the same. We will repeat the same for the other two nodes as well. Right. So we'll go here and we will go to the repository. We will disable the repository for both. Then we will go to shell and then we will say apt update. Then apt upgrade. It will ask you for the confirmation. It will quickly go and upgrade our packages for each node. So we'll go to the third node. We'll go to the repository. We will disable both repository for Ceph and enterprise Proxmox. We'll go to shell. We will say apt update. Then apt upgrade. We'll For both the nodes, the upgrade is done. The third node upgrade is done. So if you check apt update, that should not be any packages. All the packages are up to date. Go to node 2, shell, apt update. It says all the packages are up to date. Then apt update here. All the packages are up to date. So next we will start the. Alright, so now that we have our cluster ready, we have updated all the packages on all three nodes. Now let's begin with the Ceph storage cluster configuration. So for that, we need to, but before that, before we start, we need to check whether the disk is assigned or not. So in each node, if I click on each node and disks, I can see that there is additional disk allocated to this node, and check for this one, the second node, the disk is allocated, same size, and on the third node also, we have the same size. So we will create a Ceph cluster node, Ceph cluster using these disks on all three nodes. So the first thing is you have to log in on 235, the first node of the cluster. go to data center, and then we will click Ceph. And as you can see, Ceph is not installed. So what we will do, we will install Ceph on first node. All right, so it gives you this message, info message. In this one, what we have to do, we have already disabled it, but while doing the installation, it also asks you to for the enterprise repository. So since we do not have any subscription, we select no subscription, right? And then we say start installation. It will try to connect and it will do the installation. It will ask you for the confirmation and it will install Ceph. So I'll wait for this to complete. We'll go through the process on each node. We will be installing Ceph first. Then we will be creating the OSDs, and then we'll be creating the monitors, and then we will see the Ceph storage configuration, how it works. All right, so the installation is done. Click next. It will ask you for the public CIDR and cluster CIDR. Now for the production, it's recommended to use different for the different public IP and different network for the cluster. Since we are doing it for the lab, we are using the same IP address, but the production installation, we select a different public IP address for cluster man for the management and different subnet for the cluster network. But in this case, we are using the same network. Just click next, and then it tells you what to do next. So installation is successful, but we have to do what? We have to install Ceph on other nodes. We have to create additional Ceph monitors, and we have to create the Ceph OSD, and then we have to create Ceph pools. So these are the steps that need to be followed. All right, so finish. I'm done with the installation on the first one. So I'll go to the second one, 236. Go to 236. Go to data center, click on Ceph. It says not installed. So we will install Ceph here as well. We will select no subscription and we'll say install. It will ask you for the confirmation. We'll install Ceph. Because this node is part of the cluster, it should already pick up the configuration after installing Ceph. So as you can see, this next button is grayed out. Once the installation is completed, this will be enabled. So next. So when you click next, it does not ask you. Okay, it says configuration already initialized. So just say next and then finish. All right. Now don't worry about this one, cluster health warning, because we haven't created OSD. So health will be in the warning state. All right. So let's go to the third node. Click on data center. Click on Ceph. Install Ceph. Repeat the same steps. No subscription. Start this one. Ask you for the confirmation. And since this node is also part of the cluster, remaining configuration it should automatically pick up. So once it's completed, the next button will be enabled. It's enabled now. Next, the configuration already initialized. Next, it tells you to do the same thing. So the last node is done. So if you go on each node in Ceph, it was saying it was not installed, but we installed it because OSD pool is not created. So it is giving you a health warning. Don't worry about that. Once we create the OSD, it will this warning will go away, and we should see the cluster state, the Ceph storage cluster status as healthy. So the next thing is we will go on each node, the first node, and click on the node. First node, we will go to the Ceph storage and we will click on OSD. So as you can see, there is no OSD. We will be assigning the disk for this Ceph cluster. So we will create the first OSD. As you can see, the moment I created it first disk that was available, it automatically picked it up. So candidate disk, it already picked it up. So we will select it. We will say leave the other configuration as is. We will say create. It will create the OSD on node 1. All right. When we reload it, it should show us the OSD is up. So we have to repeat the same thing. Go to the other node, 236, right? Go to the node here, click on Ceph, click on OSD, and then we will create the OSD. It automatically picked up the candidate disk on the node 2 as well. So we'll say next, it will create it. So when you reload it, it should appear. Just give it a minute. It will be showing as up. All right. So we'll go to the third one. Click on this node. Go to Ceph. Create OSD. It will pick up the candidate disk. Just say create. Just give it a minute. It will come up. Now, if you go on each node in the Ceph, if you see, the status is healthy because we have created the OSD. Now next thing is we only have by default when you create the Ceph cluster, we have only one monitor. We have to create monitors for our Ceph storage. So you can do it from any of the node. Go to go to uh, go to any of the node. Go to Ceph, under Ceph, click on monitor. As you can see, we just have one monitor. We will create another one. So we'll create for two. Monitor one is already created. We'll create for the node 2. It will appear. Node 3, create. We'll create for node 3. uh, I would recommend you to go and read about the OSD, read about the monitor. I'm not explaining those things here. I'm just going through the configuration here. So we have created the monitor, we have created the OSD cluster, right? So the next thing what we have to do is, now we have assigned the disk, we have created the OSD, but how do you use it, all right? So what we can do using one of the nodes, just go there under Ceph. There is pool. We have to create one Ceph pool. So using those three disks, we will create a Ceph pool so that we should be able to access that disk. So you can name it anything. I'm giving it a name as data store 01, right? If you click on advanced, it gives you the size. That means it will keep 3 copies because we have 3 nodes. So it will keep 3 copies of your data, and minimum it will maintain 2 copies of your data. Leave everything as default. All right, so we'll create a Ceph pool here. So after it is created, we should see the data store Ceph pool in each of the node. It should be visible. So you refresh it. It's creating. It's in the process. Now you can see it is available. Data store is available. You can see 50 GB is available, and it is visible in each of the node. So whatever you keep on this data store, it will keep the Ceph storage will keep the copy of your data on all 3 nodes. So we have virtually created a Ceph storage cluster. So this setup actually completes our entire cluster configuration, and we managed to configure this Ceph storage cluster as well. Now what we will do next, I will show you how I created this one and where did I created this, the entire Proxmox cluster and the Ceph cluster. So what I did for the demo purpose, basically this cluster is created inside one of my Proxmox installation. So if I go here, this is my single node installation. This is my single node. So as you can see, I have just one node here. The other node, I removed it already. So in this one, I created 3 VMs: Prox VE1, Prox VE2, and Prox VE03. So this, what you see out here, this cluster is running inside my Proxmox. So I created 3 VMs. I assigned them the resources, and then assigned them, gave them the disk. If you can see hardware, I gave them the disk 32 GB, 50 GB each on for all three nodes. So these three nodes are basically my cluster. So I have done it on the VMs, but this is not a recommended practice actually. If you want to take the advantage of Proxmox, it is better to install it on your bare metal, like your desktop, or your install Proxmox on your desktop or your laptop or your mini PC or servers, and then you can combine those resources. Now, in the upcoming sections, I will show you the benefits and how we can use it, use the cluster, how we can use this self storage cluster, and how easy it is to combine the resources and manage your VMs and your containers. So this is the setup I just wanted to show you. I will destroy this cluster after this demonstration, and I will show you from this point onwards. I also have my cluster implemented. This is my physical nodes. I'll show you out here. I have This is my actual cluster. It has three nodes, three machines I'm using out here. So if you see the summary of this one, each machine has 12 CPU, and these are the desktop PCs with i7 processor, 12 core CPU, and each node has 64 GB RAM. So if I show you the summary of my cluster out here, it has three nodes, it has Ceph storage already configured, and if you see the power of it, I have 36 CPUs. So each three of these nodes have 12 CPUs. So I have combined 36 CPUs. I have 187, basically 196 GB of RAM available, and I have 1.72 terabyte, out of which 1 terabyte is my Ceph storage. So if I briefly show you my setup, this is my Ceph storage, 1 terabyte. I have node 1, node 2. If you see the summary, each node has 12 CPUs and 64 GB RAM. And the third one also has data store, and I'm keeping those. And if you see my setup out here, I have 4 men running. I have Postgres cluster. If you see, I have three Postgres database cluster on three nodes. First node I'm running it out here. Second one is here on the other node, and the third one is running here. I have Oracle RAG database. One node is running on this node. One of the VM is running on this host, and the second VM is running on this host. I have Kubernetes cluster with 3 masters and 5 worker nodes. First master, I kept it on one host. Second master is on the other host, and the third master is on the third node. Then I have 5 worker nodes for my Kubernetes cluster. The first worker is here on the first node. Second worker is second and third worker for my K8s cluster is Kubernetes cluster is here, second and third node. If you can see, fourth and fifth is here. I have my OpenShift installed. I have my other nodes installed. So I have distributed my workload on across 3 different host machine. Now you see the advantage. I do not have the limitation of running the virtualization on single host. These are 3 different machines, physical machines, and I am using the combined resources of this machine, and I'm able to manage these machines, move my VMs around, and I managed to take advantage of the entire cluster, entire virtualization. So this is the benefit which Proxmox gives me, which I was not able to do it on VirtualBox, and because of the free version of VMware, I was not able to take advantage of the free version because it limits me with the features. Its paid version of VMware is very good, but the free version does not give me these many capabilities which Proxmox gives me. So if furthermore, I will in the next section I will show you how do we create the VMs, how do we create templates, and how easy it is to deploy a VM, take backup of the VM, create the template, and using the template how we can deploy a VM. All right, so That's it for this section. In the next section, we will try to explore our Proxmox setup in more details. And then in the end, I will show you how this Proxmox is available. You can make your setup available over the internet using Cloudflare. So see.
So next we will be creating a VM, but before I show you how to create VM, as I mentioned earlier, I will show you the advantage of using Ceph storage cluster. So the advantage, one of the advantage I want to show you is I have this Ceph storage cluster configured. I have 1 TB disk uh, attached to each node, and I created a Ceph storage cluster out here as we have seen in the demo using the VM. But this is my physical, these are my physical machines, and I created a cluster using my 3 physical machines. So I have Ceph storage cluster out here. The advantage is all my VMs that I'm running out here locally, the VM disks are stored in Ceph storage. So the advantage out here is the copy of all my VM disks are present everywhere on these 2 nodes as well. As you can see, all the copy of my VM disk are available out here. So if I lose one of the nodes, I will have the copy of my VM's storage disk available on Ceph storage. So this is a major advantage, but it's not necessary to have Ceph storage. If you can use the cluster without configuring the Ceph storage. The only difference will be you will be storing your VMs locally on these hosts. So you can take the backup, you can have the copy somewhere else, but you can still move your VMs around. So it will do the copying. So the copying and the overhead, network overhead, and the VM utilization overhead will be there. But when you are using Ceph storage cluster, it will be very lightweight and very transparent. So if you want to move your VMs around, it will be very quick. So that's one of the advantage I wanted to mention. So let's go ahead and create a VM out here. I already have ISOs copied out here, so I'm creating a VM. I will show you how to create VM, then install Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and then we'll convert it into a template, and then we'll deploy using the template. So we'll go step by step. So first thing is we will create a VM. So just right click there, create VM. It will take you to this wizard, and then just assign the ID for your VM. Any available ID you can put out here. Test VM dot tech dot tech-mate.io. I'm just creating this dummy name. I will be deleting it later on. So next, and since I have my local storage here, all my ISOs stored here, I'm selecting 8.6, leave the kernel and Linux as is, leave this as default, and in my case I'm using this Word.io block for better performance. And as you can see, the storage, you can select the storage out here. You can either create your VM locally, or you can create, if you have Ceph storage cluster, you can create it out there. So I'm creating on Ceph storage cluster. I'm giving it 15 GB. Discard because I'm using SSDs. CPU, I'll give 2 CPU. Leave this as default, but if you want to use further virtualization within your VM, you can go and select host. Alright, so but default is fine, it works in most of the cases, but I'm selecting host. We are assigning 2 GB memory out here, and I have 2 network configured out here. So for the VMs, I'm using VMBR1. This networking part I will cover maybe in later videos, but I'm just showing you that I am using 2 bridges out here, virtual bridges. So this is for this bridge I'm using for all my VMs are using this bridge because I'm using a different subnet out here. Next, finish. My VM should appear out here. So the VM is created out here with the ISO image. We haven't installed any operating system on it. Next what we will do, we will install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.6, and then we will convert that VM into a template. Alright, so in the next section I will show you how to install Red Hat Enterprise Linux on this VM. So next we will install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 on the VM which we created. So this is the VM we created. There is no operating system installed. So I just want to take you through the settings out here. So if you click on hardware, if you later on if you want to change the memory, you can go edit and increase the memory. You can change the processor, like if you want to increase the processor, you want to change the type, so you can do it out here. And then if you want to add more disk, you can go add and add hard disk out here. So these are the small the basic settings that the configuration if you want to do, you can do it out here. So in the console, if you can see, the machine is down. So what we will do, we have already assigned the ISO image to this one. All right, so what we will do, we will start the VM to do the installation. So when you start, click on console, it should show you the installation screen. Right, so it booted using the ISO image. We will select the first one. I will do a very minimal installation of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.6 just to show you the demo. So the VM will go through the boot process and it should show us the screen. Alright, so this is the first screen. Select the language. Next. Then here is where you customize your installation. So keyboard is English, connect to Red Hat, not registered yet, you can do it later. You can select the disk. Language is fine. Local media, kdump, I always disable that. Time date setting, depending upon your location, just select the time date, time zone. And software selection, you can select the software out here. So in this case, for the demo purpose, I'm selecting minimal install. I will show you how I created different kind of templates later on. I'm not selecting anything, I'm not customizing it, just selecting the minimal installation. For the network card, I already assigned a network. You can give your machine name, host name out here, testvm.techmate.io. This is the host name of your VM. There are two names actually. So name you create out here is different than this one. So this will be the host name of the operating system that we will be installing. All right, so apply, and then we will be configuring the network. So I can go ahead and assign the IP address at this stage. If I want, I can go and assign it the available IP whichever I have. Give the net mask and I assign the gateway, for example this one. All right, I save. As you can see, it took the IP address. Alright, so that's done. Network configuration is done. Leave the security as is. Set the root password. Done. And always create a user out here so that you don't use, it's not a good practice to use root always. So create a user and later on switch to root. So create a user out here. That's it. Then begin installation. That's it. So the installation will start. It will take a few minutes to complete the installation. And once the installation is finished, we will boot the machine and see if we are able to log into the VM or not. Okay, so the installation is complete. Just click on reboot. Alright, right, so it will give me, since it is a minimal installation, it will give me the CLI based login screen. TechMate, this is the user we created, and that's it. We are logged into our VM. Our VM is installed. This is the host name, this is the IP address that we assigned to this VM. So next we will shut down the VM. We will shut down the VM and we will create a template. So let me go ahead and shut down the VM. Once the VM is down, you should be able to see here this play button will be grayed out. Alright, so our VM is host operating system. I have shut it down. Next we will be creating, okay, so we have created a VM. We installed Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.6 in this VM, and then later on we shut it down. Now what we will do is we will convert the VM into a template. I will show you the advantage of doing that. So it's very simple. Just right click that VM, convert to template. It will ask you for the confirmation, just confirm. You will see the icon will change after the completion of creation of template. So as you can see, the template creation, it is gone from the VM. The template is created. This is how you create the template. Now what is the advantage of creating the template? I will show you. I have done the installation of RHEL 9 minimal installation. I have RHEL 9 template server installation, and I have RHEL 9 with server with GUI. Similarly, I have Red Hat 8 template minimum installation. I have server installation. I have server with GUI. I have Ubuntu 2004. I have Ubuntu 2204. So what I did, all you have to do is do the installation once and then convert it into a template. And the advantage, see, these templates actually they reside, they are not residing locally, they are on my data stores. All my templates are in the data store out here. So as you can see, these are my template. The thing which start with the name which starts with base are basically my templates, and these are my VMs. So what I will do, I have created the template here. So I'm not keeping my, so just for the organization, organizing my VMs and template properly, I want to move this one. So all I can do is migrate. Yeah, see this one, before I do that, always when you create the template, make sure that you go to hardware and remove the CD-ROM, because this is something which is a local setting. See, you can see local out here, as you can read. So this is a local setting. This is not the cluster wide. So always when you create the template, remove your CD-ROM. Once you remove your CD-ROM, now this VM is actually you don't need CD-ROM anymore. So this VM you can easily move around within your cluster. So whether you have Ceph storage or not, you can follow the same steps. What we will do, I don't want to keep the VM out here in this node. So what I will do, I'll say migrate. It will ask me where. So I'll say okay, put it on my third node. I'll say migrate. Less than a minute, it just moved my template from here to, it's not available out here, it's out here. Now the advantage of using the template is, once I just have to do the installation once. Now if I want to create multiple VMs using the same version, so that's how I did. I have, if I want to create RHEL 9 minimal installation, I have the template available. I have server configuration available. So similarly, you can create, if you want to install some customized package, you can install once and then convert into a template, and then using this VM template which we created, I'll show you. I'll just say clone. It will ask me where. All right, so I'll say okay, I want this one. This is my cluster. I want to create a VM using this template on, let's say, on node 2. Right, I want to give this ID like 10002, for example. With the ID you can give anything you want, right? And I want to create the VM my new VM techmate.io. This will be your VM's name, and then always make sure that it's not linked, it's full cloned, and it will ask you for the target storage as well. So target storage same as this one, so I'm selecting the same data store, right? And I'll say clone. So what it will do, it will convert, as you can see this one, it using the template, it's creating this VM. Now it's in the process. I will show you the log. It's in the process of cloning the VM. So it just takes few minutes, creates a VM, spawns it, and then it's creating locally, then it will migrate based on the node I selected. So instead of installing it again and again, see, it created the VM using, it cloned the VM actually using the template, and it puts it out here, as you can see, my new VM. And now I can go and start the VM. I'll say TechMate. All right, so now there are two things you need to do after after cloning the VM, because since it is created from the template, it will carry the same host name and same IP address. All you have to do is you have to just change the host name and the IP address. So I will say host name CTL, set host name. What was the name of the VM I created? My new VM dot tech-made.io. Host name is changed, and I will show you this, since it is Red Hat 8. So network script, it should have the configuration file. If I'm doing it like this, you can use nmcli, you can use some other method as well to change the IP address. So I want to change the IP address, for example, to 13, for example, sorry, to 13. All right, that's it. Or I don't even have to reboot it, but just for the sake of configuration to take place properly, just want to show you how quick it is. Yeah, so TechMate, that's it. You have my new VM IP address is 10.10.113, and my new VM is ready to be used, and this is how you provision. So that's how I created so many templates, because these are the templates I work with. Red Hat Linux 9, I work with 8, I work with Ubuntu at the moment. I will be having template for CentOS as well. I'll create that when I place it here. So all I have to do is do the installation once, create the template, and using the template I can just create the VMs. So how simple it becomes, and I can move the VM around. Now you see my VM is working out here. So how simple it is. If I want to move my VM without affecting anything, everything is running out here. All I have to say is migrate my VM to 1 or 3. It's running on 2. I'll say okay, migrate to online migration. I will do the migration of my VM without shutting it down, without affecting the services. It just, it takes fraction of seconds, and then your VM is migrated. Your VM is no more out here. If you can see, your VM is out here. So this is how you can do online migration, and with Ceph storage it becomes very simple. See, nothing has changed. Everything is as it is, I can see, and it's running on a different host machine. So that's how simple it is to create VM, move it around, create the template, and spawn your new VMs using the templates. So I hope you like it, and next I will be showing you, in the final stage I will be showing you how you can how you can access your Proxmox home lab uh, using the internet. So if you have the if your lab is connected to the internet, I will show you how you can connect it using the Cloudflare tunnel, and we will configure Cloudflare tunnel, and we will access over the internet, we'll access our Proxmox. Okay, so finally we will be exposing our Proxmox installation, Proxmox web-based interface to the internet. So in order to do that, there are a couple of prerequisites, and for that you need to have a registered domain name. If you don't have that, you can buy it in just few dollars. So there are many service providers who offer the name services. So you can go to any pay name service provider like Namecheap or GoDaddy. So if you already have domain name, that's good. If you don't have that, you can buy one. That's one prerequisite. Second prerequisite is you go to cloudflare.com and create your account. So it's free. So once you create a Cloudflare account and you have your domain name registered, these are the two prerequisites. So once you have these two things, you can configure a Cloudflare tunnel. So in our case, this is our installation. If you remember, in the beginning of the video, we created this cluster. This is our demo cluster, where we have created three nodes, and we created this Ceph storage as well. So this is our 10 10 10 235. This is where my Proxmox is running. So 235, 236 and 237, these are three nodes. Now now to configure it over the internet, once I have the domain name, once I have the Cloudflare account, I can start the configuration of my Cloudflare tunnel. So first things first, if you have the domain name, for example, in my case, I have my domain registered on Namecheap. So go to domain name. I have this domain name, techmed.io. Click on manage. So you will see a name server. So this is where I updated my Cloudflare name server. How do you get these names? You Once you create a Cloudflare account, you add your domain out here. So add site, using add site you can add your domain name. So once you add your domain name, for example this techmed.io, I have already added. So click here and go to DNS. You will see the name server. So this is where you find your name server. So take the name servers from here and update it in your name service provider. So create on custom DNS. They may have their own DNS name server. Go there and update it. So this is one thing that you have to do. Once you have done that, sometimes it takes a couple of minutes, sometimes it takes hours. So within 24 hours, sometimes it synchronizes. So if it does not synchronize immediately, you may have to wait. So once you have done this one, the next thing is you have to make sure, in our case I created the Proxmox out here within my Proxmox installation. So if you have configured on bare metal directly, you can install Docker in any one of these VM or your Proxmox host, or you can create a VM inside your Proxmox. So in my case, I already have Docker machine created in my Proxmox that has access to internet, and also it has access to my Proxmox IP address. So I'll show you how. This is my Docker server. I have access to internet from here, and I have access to my Proxmox server. So, and I already have Docker installed out here. So there are a couple of other methods as well, but I'm showing you the method through Docker. So go to Cloudflare, go back to your main dashboard, click on Zero Trust. Under that, you click on this drop down button under Access. Click on Tunnel. I already have few test tunnel created, so create new tunnel, give it any name. tunnel new, for example. Next, here you'll find multiple methods of creating a tunnel. So in my case I'm using Docker. If you want to try something else, you can try. So when I create Docker, it gives me the Docker command, right? So it gives me the Docker command with the token ID, and if you see in the bottom there is no connection. So what I do is I copy this one, I come here, this is my Docker where I have access to internet, I have access to my Proxmox. So I paste it here. If you want to run it in a detached mode, just add -d after run. So -d, it will keep on running in the background. So my Docker is running with this token, so it has the access to internet. It should show me the connection out here, you see. So my Docker is connected to a Cloudflare tunnel. Next, you can create your own name, new tunnel. You can give it any name, and in our case we are selecting techmed.io. Alright, so which we already registered with Cloudflare. Click on HTTPS and click on 10.10.10.235 where our Proxmox is running, 8006. Alright, so this is the IP address and port number of our Proxmox that is running. Click on additional settings, go to TLS, and you see this setting, no TLS verifier. Just enable that, and that's it. That's all you have to do. So save tunnel. Once you save tunnel, it should appear out here, tunnel new, and it will give you the URL out here. So copy this one from here and open a browser, HTTPS, and paste here. This window will tell you that means it is already exposed and working. Put your username and root and password. That's it. Your Proxmox is accessible over the internet through Cloudflare tunnel. So you can access your internal Proxmox installation over the internet for free. So I hope you like the video. Thank you very much for watching.